What's up everyone, BB here. So today I'm just going to be doing a quick hair tutorial. It was asked by my friend who put the idea in my head on Instagram that I should do a quick hair tutorial for just in general how I go about making hair and how I go about rendering hair. The first couple of things I'm going to say, I'm using Krita, and I really wanted to make this tutorial because I don't see a lot of Krita tutorials for the most part. And it's not a bad thing, but it's not something that I really want to contribute to that. So the biggest thing here is that I'm going to be using three different brush kits that I like to use to stylize hair now. Let me go ahead and pop that on screen here. These are the three brushes that I've found the most success with as of lately. I always go by default with the pencil one brush when I'm doing things like mapping out my anything really. It doesn't have to be hair, it could be hair, the characters, anything that I'm drawing at the most. This is what I use for my sketch layer, this is what I use for my final line art. I think I might play around with other things, but this is where I always gravitate to whenever I'm going about that stuff. Basic one is what I use for when I'm actually mapping out big blocks of color. This is my base colors. I always start with a flat layer of colors before I get down to shading and rendering, so that's what I use for that. The bristles tool, as far as things go, this is a new brush that I'm experimenting with, and it's giving me a lot of success as far as getting hair in a way that I feel quite proud of and quite comfortable with. So this is something that I'm trying out with new techniques and stuff. I used to do a sort of more anime-ish approach where I would block out particular darker patterns, and it was nice for certain drawings, which in fact I'll put an example up of Raven that I've done that with recently, which had a nice bit of success with, but now I'm trying out a different style and I prefer this one a little bit more. So this is what I use now with hair as far as things. Bristle 3. One quick note to mention, I had this recorded as I was doing this on Facebook Live at the moment, so it's going to be a little bit of jumping around with the video just so I can make sure that it's a decent time frame for everything. I don't want it to be an hour long upload. So we're going to go ahead and trim and kind of edit this up a little bit so it's a little bit friendlier for time for people. So without further ado, let's get started. Starting off with the first kind of foundations of what I like to do when I'm making hair is I always start off with shapes. I always start off with making big, bold shapes as far as designing how do I want this hair to look, whether it's long hair, short hair, flowy hair, pigtails, curls, whatever. I always start off by making big, bold shapes so that it allows me to get an idea of where I want things to be as far as hair. One big thing I don't like is to leave it on the scalp. I don't draw on the scalp, I draw past the scalp and above it. It gives me the sense of volume in a three-dimensional character. So that's something that I like to play around with when I'm drawing. I always do that on my sketch layer. I always draw, like I said, big bold things when I'm doing my sketch layer. Okay, so now that we have our sketch layer done as far as what we think the hair should look like and how we want it designed, we're going to move over to the next stage where we go ahead and we finalize our sketch. So we're going to go ahead and give it a nice little line art, make it clean. We're going to do it the right way. I normally prefer to go ahead and just throw another layer up and trace over the sketch layer. A lot of people, sometimes I see artists, what they'll do is they'll have their sketch layer out and they'll erase past that, and that's not it's not anything wrong with that. I just personally like the control of having it on a brand new fresh layer and everything is clean, and that's where we get our next line art layer. The moment. Here you see me just going through and erasing any line art that might be underneath the hair. It doesn't translate well for me to have anything showing underneath the hair like that because I see it a lot actually when it comes to things like eyelashes and eyebrows, where sometimes artists will draw or keep the eyelashes and eyebrows underneath the hair, and that's a very natural thing because hair isn't exactly opaque all the time because of, you know, particles and strands in hair. But it's not a style that I like to see so much of, especially when I see it a lot in a bunch of beginner art. So I try to go ahead and erase anything that might be underneath the hair layers, eyelashes, eyebrows, necklaces, skin, anything that doesn't make sense to me. Okay, so now that we have our line art set and ready for us, we're going to move on to actually applying our base colors. This is where we go ahead and we start to we pick our base color, the main kind of idea of what we want the hair color to be. I always start off with that layer and I go down in 3 steps of different shadings and color choices, and I'll explain that shortly as I'm going through this tutorial. But for the most part right now what we're doing is just mapping out the colors for the hair, and I normally do this before I go ahead and do skin and everything, but because it's a hair focused tutorial, I'm just gonna do it like this, where I'm only kind of just focusing on just the hair. Another thing that I'd like to bring attention to is how you're going about with filling in your baseline color, or your base color, flat colors, all that stuff. I used to use lasso tools for that, but I found it would kind of make things never touch the line, and even if I did the grow technique where I would take the selection and grow it up a little bit so it actually pushed past the lines, I was never truly satisfied with things with like small corners, like where her hair kind of clumps up. So what I would do there instead is I normally now just draw over the line and fill in everything myself manually, and it gives me more control because I can actually just erase a flat or cross the line surface, which will make sure that I get that extra the extra color inside the corner. So that's something that I like to do personally too. So now that we have a totally filled out base for our hair, now we can get to rendering and actually getting into the nitty-gritty as far as the shading and rendering goes. What I like to do here is I have the actual base layer, and I'll put a layer above that base layer and actually go in and make an alpha channel. What I'll do is then I'll group the two layers together, and then the layer on top I put on the alpha lock. What this will do is it'll prevent me from drawing outside of the base layer for the color, and it also keeps everything nice and oriented for me, so I don't have to worry about things like the shading being on the base hairline color. The shading being on top of the base color for the hair, and things like drawing outside the hair color. So that'll help you out with that in the future. One thing that I learned as I was developing my techniques as an artist is that a relaxed touch is something that you definitely need when you're working digitally, even traditionally even, and for that matter with anything that requires any type of physical exertion, whether it's a sport, music, or anything. Relaxation is something that you just absolutely need to master and be in control of. As I'm using the bristle brush here, you can see that I'm going through with very super light strokes, and I'm not really going too hard with it for most of it. Like I'll do it for darker sections, like where I'm actually using a darker shade in order to emphasize the contrast of light and darkness. But for the most part, my touch is very relaxed. I'm not using too much weight or any pressure, really. So I cannot stress enough that you have to maintain a pretty light touch for the most part through all of this. As you see me nearing the end of the sketch, I decided to try a new technique as far as giving dimension to the hair and giving character to it. It didn't quite translate as well as I hoped it would for this particular character, so I decided to opt out and go ahead and try an older technique that I used to actually give little bits of character to the hair, and it worked wonderfully, and I'm super happy with how it came out at the end. Some closing remarks that I would like to make, though, just in general about art, is that it's always a trial and error. You see me going and erasing and redoing and undoing things constantly throughout this entire sketch process. It's nothing that you need to freak out about. You want to be very natural about, be very relaxed about it. It should feel natural as you're drawing, and definitely study looking at references, drawing with references. Here I don't use too many references, only because I already knew in advance kind of what I was dealing with, as indicated by the pictures in the top right corners of each character. And I was going to use the characters in this video too, but I realized as I was drawing these characters out or finishing their hair, it would have been a long video. So I will leave the link to my Instagram so you can see the pictures, the final edits of those two characters as well. With that said, if you did enjoy the tutorial, please support me. A like is fine, subscribe is awesome. I'm not by any means an expert at the craft of art. I still have years and years of studying to do. I'm happy with where I'm at now, and I would love to keep doing tutorials, and regardless of the fact that I am supported or not, I do feel like I will keep doing tutorials because it is super fun, and I do love sharing the art now, and I'm no longer at a point where I'm ashamed of it for the most part. So with that said, I hope this helps anyone using Krita, or anyone needing to make hair or anything like that, or in fact anyone needing to draw at all. I hope this helps, and you all have an awesome day. Thank you.